So there's other places that are out and around. If you remember, he gave this like cubit area, and inside all of that is holy, and outside all of that is unholy. So he's giving them an area, and he's saying, in it, life, everything you want. Out of it, not life, nothing that you want. You don't need or want anything outside of these gates. So I've always claimed that I love the change of season, and yet here I am smack in the middle of change of season. Well, not smack in the middle, but it's like this, it's like that changing period. And I'm not happy. I want it to stay warm and sunny and roasty and toasty. So for anyone who is with me for the first time, welcome to Bible 365. I'm Kathy Carter. I am hosting, and I am bringing you the Bible every single day. I am reading through it straight through, beginning to end, using the chronological Bible reading plan from oneyearbibleonline.com. Chronological means it's in historical order from beginning to end. So it is not how it is laid out in your Bible. You can't just open it and go front to back in my reading plan, because it takes things out of order. So it's really hard to follow along and to understand all the characters and everything that's going on. Much easier when we do it in a chronological context. So again, it's at oneyearbibleonline.com. Go on, download a chronological reading plan, free, printable. Use that with your own Bible, and it'll help you encourage you to, I think it's going to encourage you to read more, and it'll help you stick with it, because I feel like it's easier to understand that way. So today is day 250. It is September 6th. It's September, which is exciting in that I've already done 9 months of this. And if you guys have been sticking with me, you've also done 9 months of this, but it just stinks because I don't like September as much as I like June. Our reading today is Ezekiel 47 through 48, 29:17 through 30:19, and then 2 Kings 25:27 through 30, and Jeremiah 52:31 through 34. So it's kind of a big reading. We are in the prophecies. So here I go, 2 minutes. If you've been with me a million times for 249 days, bump through 2 minutes, come on back when we start to do the actual reading. So here we go, historical context. We are in the time of, we're in like the 500s, late 500s, 580s, 500 late 70s. And this is the time when the nation of Israel, Judah, has been completely taken over by the nation of Babylon and Assyria. So they are scattered all over. So there are really no longer many Israelites, many, if any, in the nation of Jerusalem, Judah, Israel, right? There's probably some, but most of them have been either taken somewhere else, they have been oppressed in their own land, or they have been taken out completely, right? Like, so then some of the nations have been taken out completely, some of the old kings and things like that. Babylon has overtaken them. There are people that have been living in Babylon from anywhere from like 10 to 15 to 20 years at this point, right? Because some were taken out, or there was like they've been taken out at all different stages. So there are Israelites that are living in the nation of Babylon, and they are living as Israelites in the nation of Babylon, which is what God has called them to do. And then there are some that are scattered all over. Like we got some down in Egypt. We got some all over in all these different nations, right? They're kind of hiding. We saw that when they came back to the nation of Jerusalem for a short time, but then they got taken away. So they were in Seir and Edom and Ammon, and they're all over the place. They're not really in the nation of Judah because God has punished them. This is the punishment for them turning away from the Lord and living for other gods. So when we say things like God is evil and God wants evil things to happen and God is the creator of all evil, I think we need to be really careful in understanding why certain evil things do happen. Now, I'm not going to say everything evil because I have a whole different idea about that. But some of these things, right, where we see like there's death and destruction and people go, did they deserve that? So what? They weren't following the Lord. So what? Why does that matter? He plucked these people out as a people group. He protected them. He glorified them. He blessed them. And he did all these amazing things with them. And he said, what I require of you is to honor, worship, and follow me. And they did not do it. And because they didn't do it, because his plan was to bring other nations to him, right? And then they would be glorified and honored and loved and right, and all of those things. And because they didn't do it, They dishonored the Lord. They dishonored the plan that the Lord had. And so the Lord was like, I need to punish them in order to bring them back to me. And in some ways, start this kind of cycle all over again. Because if we've seen from the beginning of text, it looks like a lot of these cycles are repeating themselves. And so right now we are with Ezekiel, who is in the nation of Babylon. So we have Jeremiah, who's in the nation of Jerusalem, although he's really in Egypt at this point. And then we have Ezekiel, who is in the nation of Babylon. And Ezekiel is prophesying about this temple. So the Lord brings him over in a dream, in a vision, and he brings him to a city. And when he brings him to this city, he shows him what looks like a glorious, amazing temple. And I've gone all over that and why that kind of cuts at me a little bit and why I have some issues with it. If you haven't seen it, go over the past 2 days and you'll see why. But right now we are in this sort of like later section where he's described all of that area and he's described the people groups and who would be living in that area. And now he's going to break up the land. And so that's where we find ourselves in Ezekiel 47. No, not 45, 47. So this is the man. There's a man that he looks like a man of bronze. And this man of bronze, he says, he takes me back to the entrance of the temple. And the first thing he sees is he sees water. So he's in a vision. This is not literal. This has not happened. This didn't happen at that time. He is inside a vision and he's being shown these things. And so the Lord says, this water was like gushing out from the east side of, and I'm sure there's a reason. I'm not going to go into any of that, but I'm sure there's a reason. But there's the east side. I'm sure people find a reason. And then he goes with a measuring line. So all this water is gushing out. And then he goes with a measuring line. And he goes with a measuring line with Ezekiel. He brings him here and he like walks him up 1,000 cubits. And he's like, now he's ankle deep in water. And then 1,000 more cubits and he's knee deep in water. 1,000 more cubits, he's waist deep in water. 1,000 more cubits, it's a river. He can't even cross over this river. So this river is so deep and he can't even cross over it. It says it's a river that no one could cross. And he says, son of man, do you see this? Like, do you see this vision? Are you recognizing this here? And then he brings him back to the river and he says, this water flows toward the eastern region and goes down to Arabah. When it enters the Dead Sea, it empties into the sea. So this water is going to go from here to there. It's going to gush all out and it's going to go from here to there. And once it goes to this certain area, which we're going to find out is like the edge of the land that God is giving him, once it gets to this area, it's mingling with other water and it's cleaning all of that water up. So the edge of that area has like clean, fresh water where everyone can be in and everyone can fish and feed themselves and all of these things. So it says it becomes fresh and large numbers of fish are there and water flows there, makes the salt water fresh. So where the river flows, everything will live. So he's watching this river flow, right? This river that is so deep, right? Because now he's seen this river so deep and that no one can even cross it. And where that river flows, there is life. Get this? Where the river flows, there is life. So the Lord is showing, this is what I'm going to give to you. And where this water is, there is life. Stay here. Stay in this. Stay among this. This is where I want you to be. I have given you area that gives you life. Outside, there's no life. So here we go. He says, but the swamps and marshes will not become fresh. So there's other places that are out and around. If you remember, he gave this like cubit area, and inside all of that is holy, and outside all of that is unholy. So he's giving them an area, and he's saying, in it, life, everything you want. Out of it, not life, nothing that you want. You don't need or want anything outside of these gates. And he says, fruit trees from all kinds are going to grow on both banks of the river. Their leaves will not wither, nor will their fruit fail. Every month they're going to bear fruit, and their fruit will serve for food, and their leaves for healing. So everything they need is going to be here. I'm hoping I'm making that pretty clear. I feel like that's the point of the vision. It's like you don't need to go outside of what I've given you, right? Everything you need will be here in this vision that I'm giving you. Well, when I eventually give you this land. Moving on, it says, these are the boundaries of the land, and you're going to divide them among the 12 tribes of Israel. And this land is going to become your inheritance. So now we're back into the area in which they have, and then how it's going to be divided. Now, it seems like, I'm going to post an image, but it seems like for those who have really plugged it out, I'm not geographically sound, so I haven't plugged it out, but it looks like all the areas in which he's given, like the Mediterranean Sea, the Megiddo, I think it's river, like all of these areas, it looks like it's back a little bit, even maybe bigger than the original 12 tribes that were taking up the nation of Israel. Right now, the actual nation of Israel is smaller, right? They hold less area. This is going to be just a little bit more, not a ton more, but a little bit more. It's kind of going up into that Lebanon area, right? And nothing outside. So like not right now, but at this time in the 500s where the tribe of Manasseh, Gad, and Dan would have been, it's nothing over in that area. It's just this strip of land inside. And so he's going to divide it up into pieces. In these pieces, so we're going to see this division, and it says, I'm going to go to verse 21 because it says you're to distribute this land among yourselves, and then you're to consider them. So everything among yourself, then the foreigner that's in here, they're going to get, right? The foreigner who's doing the exact same thing that you're doing, they're going to get a piece of this land too. It says you're to consider them as native-born Israelites. So if they're living there as native-born, they're behaving as native-born, you are to treat them as native-born Israelites, even though they're foreigners. It says, in whatever tribe a foreigner resides, there you are to give them their inheritance. So these are the tribes by name, and they start kind of breaking them up into divisions. It's going to look like this, right? The top tribe, next tribe, next tribe, next tribe, next tribe, right? Like, so instead of how it was like a chunk here and a chunk there, which is what it used to be, it looks like it's divided essentially as evenly as possible. Now everyone's kind of sort of getting the same amount of land. It looks like the same amount of territory, right? And it says, these are the tribes listed by name. At the northern frontier, Dan is going to have it. So Dan is the one that starts at the top. And then Asher, and then Naphtali, and then Manasseh, and then Ephraim, and then Reuben and Judah. And then it says, bordering the territory of Judah from east to west will be the portion you're going to present as a special gift. So essentially, smack in the middle, there's going to be this whole special precious little area, and this area is going to be where the city, we're not calling it a temple anymore, we're calling it a city, so where the city is going to be, where the Levites are all going to live. So the Levites that both are going to be like the sons of Zadok, they're getting like a special area because they follow the Lord, so they're getting the special area. But the other priests that are Levites, they're going to be living there as well, and they're going to get some area. People are going to be living on that land, and so the people that are going to be like working the land and getting the fruit and all that, getting all the food to grow, whatever, the farmers, shepherds, all that kind of stuff. There's going to be people living and working that land, and so those people are going to have area as well. So all of this is going to be sort of laid out for the entire nation. It's going to be like their own tribe. Not that they're separate from anybody else. They're not. They're not. But they have their own territory. And then after that, we see the rest of the tribes go down like that. And it says, very importantly, they must not sell or exchange any of this property. This is the best. So this area, that special territory, is the best of the land, and it cannot pass into other areas or other hands because it's holy to the Lord. This particular area is even more holy, I think, than the rest. So this is the area that is holy to the Lord because it's housing the Lord in there. The prince is going to live in there. So it said, and then its produce is going to supply food for the workers. What remains on both sides is going to belong to the prince. So whatever prince is living there at that time, which again seems to me, if we're following suit along with what he's called princes in the past, it's the kings, right? Because they're prince under him. He's the king. And so they're prince under him. So anyone that he puts on the throne that will be under the Lord, that person is going to have a portion of the land. And then it says under that, the rest of the tribes are all going to have some land. And then there's going to be gates and there's going to be exits. So this whole little next section, which is Ezekiel 48:30, this next section reminded me of in Numbers. So in Numbers 2, I'm not going to go back and read it, but if you want to go back and read it, especially if you have never been here before, I'd love if you went back and read it. So in Numbers 2, they set up the tabernacle. They're going through the wilderness for 40 years. Tabernacle is set up, and when the tabernacle is laid out, it's the tabernacle, and then the Levites are kind of around on the outside of it. Doesn't look the same. And then there's three tribes, right? So it's the temple, Levites, and then all the rest of the 12 tribes around. The rest of the 12 tribes around, and I want to note this because it's noted in my book. It's not noted, but you're going to say, Manasseh and Ephraim were part of those 12 tribes. So the Levites were the ones that were around, and they didn't have their own area. The Levites were around. Joseph didn't have an area. So then Manasseh and Ephraim had their own territory or their own tribe, right? So that was part of that. So it was a square, and then all of these tribes around it. That's not the way it's rolling here. this way it's rolling here is Joseph actually has, because it's not even set up the same, which I thought was really interesting. I thought they would have everything exactly the same. It says on the one side of the gates, it's going to be Reuben, Judah, and Levi. So Levi's actually getting to be kind of like a portion in this gate. And then the next side is Joseph, Benjamin, and Dan. And then we see these third sides are Gad, Asher, and Naphtali, and Simeon, Issachar, and Zebulun. So each of them all get a tribe. So there are some slight differences, although it reminds me of that area. Sorry, we had a little break because my neighbor's dog was barking. So I hope that it didn't get too crazy. Okay. And then so anyway, they were all set up in all the gates. And then it said the distance around will be 18,000 cubits. So it's the city area. And it says the name of the city from that time will be the Lord is there. So now that city that he's been looking at and seeing and getting all the details of, that city is going to be called the Lord is there. Assuming because the Lord is going to be there, right? He's going to be there and he's going to be dwelling among his people. He's going to be living among his people. All right. So moving on, now we're going to this different section so that's the end of that vision. So I've made it kind of clear, like I struggle with that vision a little bit because of the fact that it hasn't come to pass yet, right? We haven't seen this new amazing temple. Like we haven't seen it yet. And so if we haven't seen it yet, it would make sense for the Israelites that it's still to come, right? That would make sense because it's a vision that hasn't come yet. It's a prophecy that hasn't come yet. And it looks very similar to what they did in the past. So it looks like they're coming back and he's redistributing all of this amongst his people, his Israelite people. So my issue, of course, is if the sacrifices and all of that were all made, I'm not sure how all of this fits in to where we are now. So if this is a prophecy that is yet to come, I'm not sure how this will fit in with all of the rest of us. You know, are we going to be the foreigners that are living in that area? And I'm not sure we would all fit in that area. I mean, I know it's a city, but anyway, so it's definitely a struggle for me. This is definitely something that I've been wrestling with for the past few days. And it's what's interesting is I keep coming back to, for whatever reason, I keep coming back to this idea of Ecclesiastes, like not to dwell in all of this, because I feel like some of the reality is we're supposed to be, as believers, we're supposed to be, and the Israelites now then through all times are supposed to be behaving in a certain way to bring this about. And the reality is that we're not, because we're worried about so many of these other things, right? Like we're worried about getting this and having that, and we're not behaving in the way in which the Lord wants us to behave, which would bring this future vision about. So I'm still, on the fence about the full meaning of it, but it's there, and I think it's important, and I think it's definitely needed to be noted and discussed. So anyway, I want to move on from there because now we're going on to something different that happened. So it says, in the 27th year, in the first month of the first day, the word of the Lord came to me. So he's talking to him and he's saying, so Ezekiel, remember, is living in Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar is the king in Babylon. And so he has this vision, or the Lord is speaking to him. And the Lord says, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, drove his army in a hard campaign against Tyre. Tyre was one of the guys, or one of the nations, one of the areas, which is all the way up in the north, like what is, again, current day Babylon, all the way up. And this is the one that the Lord said that the vast oceans are going to come over you. So at one point, Babylon came over and overtook them, right? And he said, Babylon took a hard campaign against Tyre. I prophesied it coming, and I wanted it to come because they were against my people, Israel. Right? So the Lord decreed that this was going to happen. The Lord wanted this to happen. The Lord desired for this to happen because they were against his people, Israel. And so Nebuchadnezzar did what the Lord wanted to be done, right? And so he said, because of that, I want to reward him for what he did, because he worked in what I wanted to have happen. And he said, he and his army got no reward. So as his reward, he's going to give Nebuchadnezzar Egypt. Egypt is a massive nation with tons of money. And so he says, I'm going to give him Egypt. I'm going to let him go in and he can plunder the entire area. He can take all of their wealth, and that will all be his from now on. And he's going to do it because his army did for me what I wanted, declares the Lord. On that day, so this is another thing I find fascinating on verse 21. On that day, so on the day that he gives him Egypt is what I'm thinking, I will make a horn grow for the Israelites, and I will open your mouth, who I think is Ezekiel, among them, and they're going to know that I am Lord. So this horn is the thing that's in front, the big thing, the important thing, right? Because again, I so many images of horns and horns on the altar. And so it seems like someone is going to be born at that time that Ezekiel needs to prophesy about and it's on the day that they take Egypt. So the day they take Egypt, someone's going to be born of the Israelites. And this is going to be an important someone that's born among the Israelites. And Ezekiel is supposed to prophesy about him. So we're going to have to see as that comes through. That's like a little tidbit that I feel like slipped in that I don't necessarily know how much I've seen before or noticed before. All right, so then going down into Ezekiel 30, he says, prophesy against Egypt. And so he goes against Egypt and he prophesies how the sword's going to come against Egypt and they're going to wind up losing their land and they're going to be destroyed. The allies of Egypt are going to fall, so it's not just going to be Egypt. He says, on that day, messengers are going to go out for me in ships. They're going to frighten Cush. So Cush is going to be frightened and they're going to be taken down as well. And he says in verse 10, I'm going to put an end to the hordes of Egypt by the hand of Nebuchadnezzar. I'm going to inflict punishment on Egypt, and they will know that I'm the Lord. This isn't so that, by the way. This is and they will. So he's not trying to prove anything to Egypt at this point. He's not trying to bring Egypt to him. It's and they're going to know. So the matter is, I'm going to do this thing. I'm prophesying it beforehand, and they're going to know that it is me. Going down into this next section, this is the next two sections are kind of it. This is the last little bit. And interestingly enough, I was wrong about, not necessarily wrong because I don't think I said anything about it, but I thought that Jehoiakim died. And so we're going into Jehoiakim, who was the son of Jehoiakim, who was the king before Nebuchadnezzar put somebody else on the throne. So he took Jehoiakim away. Jehoiakim did evil in the sight of the Lord, took Jehoiakim away and imprisoned him over in Babylon. And so then we see a new king comes in the nation of Babylon, not Nebuchadnezzar. And it says in the 37th year of the exile of Jehoiakim, who was the first, by the way, he was the first people taken out. He wasn't after siege and after Jerusalem. Jehoiakim was one of the first people that was taken out. Marduk became king of Babylon. He released Jehoiakim. He spoke kindly to him. He gave him a seat of honor, and then he fed him for the rest of his life. He said day by day, the king gave Jehoiakim a regular allowance as long as he wanted it. So he let him. So this next king, Nebuchadnezzar, put him in jail, and this next king took him out of jail, let him live amongst their people, fed him every day, and gave him an allowance. He kind of gave him this seat of honor more than any of these other kings. We don't necessarily know why, but we know that that was given to him, and I think he lives out his days there, which we will definitely see in the future. But that's how we're ending today. I feel like that's ending on a good note, which is nice, finally. So if this has been a blessing to you guys, I want you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I would love comments. I always love comments. I want to hear what you guys have to say. And then keep reading. I will see you guys next time.